We're making this video because there's been a bit of confusion about the use of plasma devices for eyelid tightening, upper lower eyelid tightening for aesthetic purposes and so on. Now, it is a very clear fact that devices that have no medical intended uses for skin treatments are not getting into the MDD, which is the Medical Devices Directive. Therefore, they're not medical devices. What characterize a medical device is intended use. So if there's no medical intended uses, it's not a medical device, and there's no restriction to its use to doctors only. And this is not something that we just say is a fact of law, and it's been confirmed in writing by the HSC, the Health and Safety Executive, that aesthetic devices, plasma devices for aesthetic uses, are considered as non-medical. That was done in 2015. We have the this document in writing on file. The same concept for eyelid tightening and aesthetic uses has been confirmed in writing also by the MHRA. So these devices that have no medical intended uses are not medical devices. There's been a bit of confusion because of a heavy marketing of another type of another device, actually one or two, which have been marketed for doctors only, and that could be rightfully so, because these devices amongst them have also some medical intended uses, as to say warts removal and so on. Therefore, these devices, including plasma devices or electrical arcing devices that have no intended medical uses and are used for eyelid tightening, tattoo removal, etc., for skin tightening and so on, are non-medical devices, and as such there's no and these are treatments that are non-medical, and it's not just us that we're saying it. It's quite clear in the legislation, the European legislation. In fact, there's a new legislation that seems as if it's been passed and may be coming into force in 2020, May 27th, 2020. I can't remember exactly whether it's the 27th, but it's in May 2020. And this new legislation at European level states that light emitting devices and so on that are for skin therapy, well, not for skin therapies, for aesthetic uses, including tattoo removal, are going to be part of the Medical Devices Directive. And that is a legislation that's been made very likely after lobbying from a certain sector of the aesthetic industry, which is to say the doctors. That has been done very likely following that. So up until now and 2020, May 2020, the sale and use of these devices are unrestricted to doctors only. So if you're a beauty therapist, as beauty therapists in the UK, especially Germany and several other European countries, can use it, and there's no legislation that is restricting their use to these professionals. So actually within the UK, Germany and many other countries, there are several aesthetic professionals who are not doctors who are using this device, have been using it for a long time. If they can use it in your own country, as long as you're within the European Union, your country is within the European Union, you can use them as well, and there cannot be a restriction to doctors only. Now, we are making this video because there's been a bit of confusion. Some people apparently working for the public sector in certain countries have tried to state that eyelid tightening, plasma eyelid tightening, is a medical application, and it is clearly not. That has been confirmed in writing, just to double check really, by a number of of public authorities in the UK and outside the UK. And therefore, if your country is within the European Union, there cannot be any restriction to the use of these devices in a European country. What I'm trying to say here is, since the European Union means that there's a single market, and if you're able to provide certain services within one country, within the European market, legally, you shall do the same in any other country. And that applies to aesthetic services and devices of any kind. So if you're able to use a device within the UK, you're able to use it within Italy, Spain, Germany, for example, one of them, where they're heavily used for aesthetic purposes. And hence, there cannot be a limitation in any other European country, either by legislation or by interpretation of legislation. Therefore, this video is just to make you aware that if you're an aesthetic practitioner and if you're working in the aesthetic sector, there's no legislation that makes these devices for eyelid tightening, tattoo removal, etc., moles removal as well, restricted to doctors only. And there's no legislation of the sort. So you rest assured that up until May 2020, you can buy and you can use these devices freely. After that, depending on what device you're using, that can change, because the legislation is quite clear about what devices are and what devices are not getting into the Medical Devices Directive. After that, you can still keep whatever and use whatever device you've already purchased or you already hired, but then you cannot buy new devices or hire new devices that get into the medical remit. It's not as if in 2020 then you have to throw away the devices or that you already purchased up until then. So hopefully this makes it clear. If required, we're going to publish on our websites parts of the correspondence that we had with the public authorities, if needed be. But the legislation is quite clear and there's no debate over it. Therefore, once again, if you're in the aesthetic sector and you're not a doctor, rest assured there's no legislation that in writing or an interpretation of legislation that limits this sort of aesthetic treatments to doctors only, and you can use them as well. So thank you very much for watching, and this is what you're watching right now is one of the thousands of procedures that we've carried out with the BeautyTeck.